Hi folks, my name's Andrew Stevens with Trend Micro. I want to welcome you to our webinar today on cloud misconfigurations and how they can cause breaches, and even better still, how to avoid it. With me here today is Aaron Ansari. Aaron is a vice president here at Trend Micro, and he comes to us from the recent acquisition of Cloud Conformity that Trend Micro acquired. And previous to Trend Micro and Cloud Conformity, Aaron served as the chief security architect at BMW Financial Services, overseeing development and application, security policies, standards, and guidelines. He also managed application compliance across BMW and served as a subject expert, ensuring key vendors and partners maintain their BMW practices. Aaron's also built his AppSec portfolio with prior roles at JP Morgan Chase, Cardinal Health, and Huntington Banks. So welcome, Aaron, and I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. Much appreciated. I appreciate the history of my pedigree, and hopefully that for the audience lets you know that I feel your pain and have been in your shoes a time or two and have seen some of the things that we'll be talking about today. It's my hope and my pleasure actually to be here, but it's my hope that you get value out of this. I know we're recording this. Hopefully you're able to share it with other resources on your team that aren't able to make it. And we do have a question or chat window available for you to go in and enter any questions or comments that you have as we're going over this. So please make this as interactive as possible. So the title of the presentation, right, we're going to talk about breaches and how to avoid them, misconfigurations, right? And without necessarily naming who or what has happened in the industry, I'm sure you as security professionals and practitioners have seen what's been happening in the space and some of the big and heavy news stories that have come out of the past year or so. It's no secret, though, that there's a increasing or burgeoning cloud market that's happening. If you look at the major cloud providers, and I'm going to limit this here to North America, but if you look at the major cloud providers across the industry, the names that pop up, AWS, Azure, GCP, right? The growth that's being experienced in these markets from a prediction standpoint is massive, right? Odds are that at your company today, where you're sitting, 2, 3, 5 years ago, you didn't have a cloud project. You didn't have a huge presence in the cloud. Maybe there's some shadow IT people within your organization that went out and bought an AWS presence, or maybe there's some rogue business unit that went out and did something on its own. But by and large, as an IS or IT practice, you were maintaining an infrastructure and a presence within your own four walls or within a co-location. It's not the case anymore. Right? And these major companies and these major organizations are seeing huge growth and huge profits from those growths with presence and customers within the cloud. And you can see here from some of the stats that are quoted by Gartner, right? 22% growth as it relates to AWS. Containers going up by 35%. The cloud market in 2022 increasing to $331.2 billion with a B dollars at a growth rate of 16.1%. That's only going to continue, right? These organizations and the growth that is moving over to the cloud is constant. It is consistent. It is something that your business, if it hasn't experienced it yet today, will be doing as part of a project coming up in 2020 or 2021, guaranteed. And what you see as part of that is the cloud providers giving an increased level of services, right? An increased level of technology, an increase in the delivery, the content delivery that they're going to give to their customers. So if you highlight here in AWS, you see the number of services increasing almost 100% year over year, right? Specifically from 2018 to 2019. If you're at reInvent, you saw the launch of many, many new services that were part of AWS. And that's to meet the demand that's coming from the customers, right? They've got a huge set of customers that are ranging from cloud native customers to ones that are just beginning their migration, and the need to increase the complexity and the service delivery to their customers is huge. So you see that these cloud providers are responding by giving an increased level of quality from a service standpoint to their customers. Well, what does that do for you? And how does your company react, right? So the expertise, the schooling, the education that you had, that the people that you're hiring now for positions that you've got, odds are they didn't cover, cloud security, cloud architecture in school, right? So the experience level and the expertise of the employees and the staff that you've got at your organization tends to be a little bit behind from a learning curve standpoint as it relates to cloud. Compound that with security, right? Security is just getting into main practices in educational environments, right? Let alone cloud. You compound those two things, and you find that there's a steep learning curve. And when I was at one of the financial services companies that I worked at, one of my themes for the year was the year security is no longer an afterthought. And I worked hard to do almost like a marketing campaign to make security not an afterthought on projects and with people in development practice. Sadly, today, that still could be a campaign that you could have in 2020 for whatever career or whatever job you're in. Make 2020 the year that security isn't an afterthought, and you'll still sort of have that. So what do you do when you combine that, right? You get an increasing level of complexity that's coming from the service provider, the cloud service provider, with new services and new functionality being launched monthly. You have a decreasing level of expertise, or at least a static level of expertise. Maybe that level of expertise is zero, but a decreasing level of expertise that's coming in from a technologist standpoint. What ends up happening? Right? And let me throw one other aspect in there, and that's budgets, right? Budgets don't tend to go up very much. So the ability to hire a third party or the ability to get somebody else to come in who does have expertise, who might have the level of experience that's needed for the projects that you're working on tends to be limited. What do you get? Well, you get a recipe for misconfiguration, right? You get a recipe for misunderstandings. You get a recipe for having potentially what could be a security incident or a gaffe, at least on your company's part. So what we did is we went through and started to look at what we're getting, what people are seeing, mid last year as it relates to a misconfiguration standpoint. And by the way, these misconfigurations are all well covered within the Cloud One Conformity platform. But point behind it is we're seeing a level of misconfiguration that's consistently happening from customer to customer, right? So that level of expertise as it relates to storage, as it relates to key management or key infrastructure, as it relates to validation of users, identity and access management, is consistent, right? So there's a gap. And I'd argue that it's actually a wide gap between the expertise and what's happening within our customer base and the configurations and the cloud posture that's being done there. With respect, though, to the teams that are trying to do the work, right? There's an increase in agility, right? There's an increase to speed. There's an increase to go to market. Odds are you're sitting in your cubicle or your office now, and you're no longer in an iterative or sort of waterfall application delivery model, right? You're not in a waterfall. You're into more of an agile environment. You've got stand-ups. You've got scrum masters. You've got build coordinators. You've got releases that are happening daily, weekly, monthly, not quarterly or even annually or semi-annually, right? So your need to execute and to deliver upon product as it relates to going to market and as it relates to your business delivering content has gone up, right? And so you couple that on top of this, and you've got the velocity that's tied to application delivery that's coming here, and you've really got a recipe for disaster. Now, I'm not sitting here preaching gloom and doom or FUD, right? Obviously, when I say you have a recipe for disaster, I'm saying you have an opportunity there to work on the management and the posture management that you have around that. So what we've done at Trend is we actually released a report based on years of research, and more in particular based on the last year of data and research across our customer base. Very, very large organization with thousands of customers across the world. So a great pool of data and a nice relationship with our customers to be able to meet with. So we actually produced a report. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure we can make the report available to you, or you can just search the Trend 2020 forecast report. And we found a couple of things. One, with this misconfiguration, with the lack of knowledge that's there, we're finding that attackers are certainly finding a way to take advantage of weaknesses. Two, the serverless framework that's being built up, right, is unfortunately ripe for misconfiguration because of the reasons that we said, which introduces some vulnerabilities as well as vulnerable code that could be released as part of that. This obviously compounds everything and gets to the point where there are, in addition to the infrastructure standpoint, application or container level components that tend to be tied to various security concerns related to how the application works. Now, this might not be any different from the static or dynamic code analysis that you were doing in your development practices 5-10 years ago, because you still have to do the development and analysis of code and peer review and security reviews of code that's going out there. You're just having less visibility into it, right? You don't have that visibility into how or when an environment is spun up. If you're in a serverless install that is spun up for a couple of days and a development team spins something up Monday through Wednesday and spins it back down, odds are from a security and visibility standpoint, you either, one, didn't know that it was ever spun up or spun down, or two, by the time you did know, were unable to respond to whatever happened within that environment, whatever happened with that data. And unfortunately, the people that are paying attention to these things, right, the news agencies and federal agencies. So here we have a list of kind of a compilation of various ranges and fines. The unit of currency here isn't U.S. dollars, but the point remains the same, right? We've got millions of fines that are being leveraged from in this case, GDPR standpoint, but from, obviously this is European, but, California coming out with CCPA, right? The industry, I'll say the governments are moving towards mandating and protecting data. So back when I was in my roles, one of the things that I had from a hammer standpoint was, Aaron, why do we need to do this? Why do we need to add this security tax to this project that we're doing that's taking payments for Rolls-Royce customers? Gee, I don't know. The hammer that I would be able to use is, well, look, there are federal, there are global, there are standards that we have to do from a compliance and framework standpoint that'll mandate that we have to protect and that we have to do that. So what's come out of that, right? We've got this industry, we've got this increase in cloud. We've got organizations and entities that are migrating to the cloud at an increasing rate. We've got development environments that are moving at a high speed velocity that need to respond to business and need to respond to customer needs. And we've got these shadow IT and sort of presence that's popping up and down in the cloud. What do we have to do and how and what is the space or the organization that's the label that's responding to that? And what you'll hear and what you'll see commonly is Cloud Security Posture Management. So CSPM, right? We're a big fan of acronyms. This isn't a 3-letter acronym. This is a 4-letter acronym, so it might be a little bit different to you. Get used to adding an additional character there. But this is Cloud Security Posture Management. It's being recognized by Gartners, and the basics of it are the sum of what I've been talking about here, right? The workloads, the environment require configuration controls and visibility into those workloads and into that environment. You have to be in a position as a security professional, as a cloud security architect, as a cloud architect, to understand what's happening. Gone are the days where you knew about an application that was being built, 6-8 months before it was being built because you found out about the server that was coming from Dell or HP. You knew about the hardening processes that the network team was going to do. You knew about the middleware stack that was going to be put in. You knew about the application team that was going to be doing development on top of that. All of that is done now with the click of a mouse in a matter of seconds and a completely frictionless sort of environment and install. So this field, or kind of what we're going to be talking about in particular, wraps up very well within the CSPM, or Cloud Security Posture Management sort of work. So I'm going to pass this back over to Andrew. We're going to ask a couple of questions. I'm going to take the feedback and talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to go into a little bit more detail on this.
Thanks very much, Aaron. Great overview of kind of what's going on in the industry and some of the challenges here. So yeah, we just wanted to get a couple feeling for what you guys are seeing in your environments and your organizations. So I pushed a question there to you right now. You can look at that on your screen as it comes up, and I'm just going to read it to you. So the first one here is, what are your biggest pain points around cloud services? And so there's a couple of options there: ensuring the security of the workloads, creating and implementing business-aligned security strategies, establishing actionable performance and risk metrics, implementing effective data protection, managing identities, managing incident response, maturing your vulnerability management capabilities, or creating and rolling out high-impact security training. So if you guys can just give us an idea, and Aaron will kind of comment on that a little bit, and then we have one more polling question before we get into, Aaron's going to talk a little bit more about some of the solutions available in the market. And I would also, after you're done answering this polling question, if you do have questions, please use the Q&A widget to ask your questions, and we'll be sure to answer those at the end. We've reserved some time to answer questions live, and we'll try to get to some of them in the the Q&A widget as well. So here we go. Let's see what we've got for answers on this. Great. Aaron, are you seeing that?
Yeah, I'm seeing this. I'm seeing this, and this is pretty much in alignment with what we're seeing in the industry as well. What surprises me a little bit is the implementation of effective data protection. So, I'll tell you, in 2006, I worked to implement a DLP program at the organization that I was at. In 2019, I was told it was finally implemented. So I was hoping this problem kind of was taken care of. But what's great about this problem in particular is tagging and some of the services that are offered via the database functionality from the cloud service providers actually help effectively build this into it. And obviously, our solution and platform helps mitigate this to a certain extent as well. So this aligns very well. Obviously, ensuring the security of cloud workloads is huge and sort of the leader there. Tying incident responder IR as part of that is a good one, and one that we will certainly be speaking to as well. I think we have one more set of questions that's coming as part of this. And this aligns well with the answers that you just said. So we've said that we've had this problem here. What are you doing about it?
Yeah, exactly. So the next poll question here was, what are you doing about visibility into your cloud services? So 4 options there: no visibility, limited visibility, using existing cloud service providers' tools, or using an existing cloud security posture management tool. So give us a sense there of that, and Aaron will comment on that in just a second here. Give everybody a second to make sure they have filled in their responses. Okay, let's see here. So a lot of people using the existing cloud service provider tools.
Yep, almost half the audience using the CSP service tools, which is great. We certainly recommend that as a first step, right? If you've got limited or no visibility into it, that's tough. It's nice to see 20% are sort of adopting a CSPM. That's higher than we're seeing from an industry average. We're finding it closer to about half that. Actually, 10% of the people with whom we speak have a CSPM tool or solution in place. But good to see that of this audience, we've got a much more advanced sort of group of people. But this speaks well to sort of what we're saying, right? You as your audience, as this audience, have gotten the message, right? You see the problem You've identified the gap, and you're looking for some answers. And some of those answers are provided by the cloud service providers themselves, which is good, right? So the good news about the Cloud One platform is that we actually already ingest all the data that's provided by the cloud providers, right? So we call them CSP, cloud security providers, or cloud solution providers, depending on how you like that TLA. But they provide, sort of a base level set, right? There's Security Center, there's Security Hub, there's some other security services that are part of the platform themselves. But what you need to understand, one, is the shared responsibility model that's provided, that's part of the delivery that the cloud provider is giving you. If you don't know what the shared responsibility model is, you should look it up. All the cloud providers have a shared responsibility model as part of their delivery. But then two, for the most part, and we went back and forth on asking this question. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to ask a question about, are you in a multi-cloud environment? And for the most part, what you're finding is either for risk mitigation reasons, right, for business continuity, disaster recovery, there's a multi-cloud environment in an organization, or because of the expertise that's available as part of the cloud. Example, people think that machine learning and artificial intelligence is GCP's, strong wheelhouse. Example, you might be an AWS consumer, but Amazon might compete with your organization as a business, so you don't want to put money or a lot of dollars into AWS. Another example is, as part of your Microsoft license, you might have some sort of agreement that allows you to get Azure services, right? So multi-cloud is another feature or functionality that's there. And when you start to have to rely on multiple consoles, multiple dashboards, multiple functionalities to get the information or the data, tends to be a problem. And two, leveraging that the cloud provider as part of the person that's giving you the thumbs up. Like if you're letting the service provider tell you that everything's good, odds are every single time you ask them, they're going to tell you that everything's good, right? So what we've come up with as a solution set is Cloud One. Cloud One is so you see the 6 components of this. I'll call them each a wedge. It's a multi-layered and multifaceted view of your cloud environment, and it covers. If you think back to the OSI model, right? The all the way down and up the stack, right? From the hardware, from the network component, all the way up to the application delivery component of things. It covers you in all those pieces and parts of the components that you would have as part of your application. And the beauty of it is it's in one place, right? So it's a single dashboard. It's aggregated data. It's completely exhaustive and covers each of the aspects of what you're looking at, and gives you that visibility and the capacity to have the insight in a single environment. And so if we talk about some of the pieces and components of this, and I'm going to be respectful of time here, so I'm going to go a little bit quickly through this because obviously I want to focus on the conformity component of this. But we've got everything from workload container and host security to actual security for the images that are part of the container as part of our Deep Security Smart Check product. Some of the people on the phone here are likely deep security customers and have seen this in the past couple of years. So we were able to get this and integrate it into part of the Cloud One platform, which has been a huge benefit for our customers and something that has been positively responded to for certain. As well as the Immunio product, which was another component that we had separately that was a couple of years ago. So you can see how tying this all together, right, and having the ability and the capacity to look at the entire stack and the entire layers of your model, from everything from the workloads, the container, the application, the storage of the data, right? We talked about DLP. We talked about data classification as being one of the problems there. Having the ability to actually scan the cloud storage services is there. Obviously, conformity is something that we're going to go through in depth, so I won't cover that here. But even down to that network layer and even down to that component. The Cloud One strategy really puts it all in one place. I obviously I'm a little biased, but obviously I'm a Trend employee here. But I'd argue that it is the most advanced cloud visibility solution, security services platform for you in your cloud today. And I would challenge you to look at that. So we're actually going to look at the conformity component of it, and we're going to talk about kind of why and how we, as what was formerly Cloud Conformity, now part of Trend Micro Cloud One Conformity, is here and what we do. And what we do is specifically give you that visibility into the infrastructure of your cloud, right? So when somebody spins up an environment on an account in a serverless capacity for a temporary amount of time, we are able to give you that visibility into what's happening. And in addition to that, we're able to provide you with an analysis of what is happening within that environment, right? So we can say, hey, somebody spun up in this environment, they logged in with this account, and they spun up this environment. And by the way, they didn't configure things correctly, right? So they had an S3 bucket over here. They have an RDS instance over here. It's been sitting idle since they spun it up. We're able to sit there and do the analysis of it, but also offer you the ability to fix and remediate any findings that we have. Again, in that single one-stop shop place of visibility to run and do the check of those analysis and run that analysis of your environment in real time, right, in fractions of a second, right, and continually. So one of the other things that's important about the way that we do this is that we're doing this constantly. It's one thing to be able to come in and say, okay, I did a scan of the environment this week, pre-build or post-build. This is where we are. This is our posture. This is how are things going. Here, Mr. Auditor. Here, Mrs. Compliance Officer. Here's where things stand. By the time you've printed that document or sent that PDF, the environment's changed, right? We're in that agile, that complete high-velocity build mentality, and there's a lot that's happening, right? New services have been released. So what do we do from a conformity standpoint is that we provide a set of checks, and it's a huge library of checks. If you haven't seen our knowledge base yet, please go out and check our knowledge base because we actually provide you with the step-by-step guides on how to find and remediate the things that I'm going to be talking about here. So we give you the capacity to get to remediation and even sort of that RASP self-healing sort of model with what we're finding, and we also overlay certain frameworks and certain components on top of that to do that. We understand the build processes and the way that you kind of do your development, your pipelines, and the way that your team kind of builds. And so we build in capacities like template scanning. We build in the capacity to integrate via API. You don't actually have to log into the UI to look at this. So we'll give you the data via a programming interface so that you can have the data in a consumable fashion. And we map back to the best practices of the cloud providers. That's the beauty of this thing, right? So I told you that we ingest the data they ingest the services or components that are provided by the cloud providers, and that's true, right? So 40% of you go through and you're using, GuardDuty, Macy, those sort of things. You're using the Security Hub components of the tenets of security with or tenets of best practices architecture with Azure. So we consume that data. We bring it in. It's a great starting point. And then we map back to the actual components of it. So if you are sitting there and you're like, we practice, the well-architected framework, or we practice the 4 tenets of Azure security, I can actually tell you how you map back to those and how you map back to the control pieces of that. So it's very, very, it's meant to be very helpful. It's meant to be very visible, and it's meant to be something that helps shows you that. Now I'm going to show you a brief demonstration of the platform here. There's a little bit of a lag that happens. Call it the Wi-Fi connection. Call it the widget that the plugin that's helping share this screen. This isn't just like a Zoom or a WebEx or something. Dealing with 300 and some odd people, we had to have a platform that does this. So I'm going to go through and show this to you, but if there is a lag or if you're not necessarily seeing what I'm seeing, wait just a little bit. The audio should be synced up with what's happening, so you shouldn't see or have too much of a delay. But what I'm sharing right now is actually the platform and the UI. And what counts, so you can see a multi-cloud environment here, right? I've got AWS and Azure components. I'm going to focus on just one of these AWS accounts. And what you can see is an overall level of compliance tied back to those 5 pillars of the well-architected framework. So I can see I'm 64% compliant as it relates to how the well-architected framework works. Now, beyond that, right, we go and cover beyond just the well-architected framework, right, because or the 4 tenets of security, best practice security architecture. So we've got some other components and some other features that we have. So you can actually go through here and check, how things are happening as it relates to that framework, right? So you can instantly imagine adding an account, configuring the account via our CloudFormation template within half an hour. I'll say 35 minutes, right? Because it takes about 4 minutes to run that first initial scan. Going and being able to say, look, this is where we stand as it relates to the well-architected framework. Or look, this is where we stand as it relates to NIST 800-53 fourth revision, tied specifically back to the controls and allowing you to go and look at the specific instance of what's happening within that environment. So here I can see the control is AC-2, account management. And here I can see in my global master account, I've got a compliance issue that ties to a failure that would show that I failed that control, right? So if I was doing an audit as it relates to this, I would see that pop up. We have a couple other frameworks that are available that aren't necessarily tied to these tabs, right? So we've got HIPAA, we've got GDPR, PCI, those sorts of things. We want to service our customers by the industries that they're in, and these are the industries that we're seeing moving to cloud and adopting things from this nature. So you're able to, with the click of a mouse, with a low level of time and investment, see how things are happening in your environment almost immediately, right? So see this breadcrumb trail. I'm looking at extreme high and very high findings that are failures in my environment, and I can see, okay, on this account, I've got 10 checks that run. I've got an S3 bucket that has default encryption turned off. Oh, you know what? This is actually our public website. So let's do this as an exception to this because we want our public website to be unencrypted. Or, oh, you know what? This is very important. Not only is this high, this is extreme, right? This is a super, super huge finding that we need to mitigate right away, and we want to tie some auto remediation that's part of that to this. So configurability, visibility,
hey Aaron,
any sort of other.
Aaron, this is Andrew. Sorry, getting a few comments here that people can't see your demo.
Oh, sure.
Oh, maybe they can now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, there's about a 14, 15-second lag with this happening.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's keep going then. Sorry about that.
No worries. And I'll say this. I'm certainly willing to sit down with you and go through this, one-on-one. So if there's a level of interest that's popping up here, at least a level of interest enough to have a conversation, obviously it's my job to help cultivate that level of interest. So as we're demonstrating this, if you want to see more, if you're on the website and looking at the knowledge base right now and like, ooh, I need to see how this rule works or how this configuration is done, please reach out to us and we'll certainly walk you through it. So as I was saying, like configurability, right, visibility, some sort of other ability verb is how and why we built this and the name of the game. It's meant to be consumable. It's meant to be digestible. It's meant to be something that you can process through. And it's meant to be via the methodology that you need to do it. So I'll actually demonstrate some of the communication or configuration settings that we've got here, and hopefully you'll see this. I'll pause on this screen for a long time so that it does catch up. But let's say you're doing development in a Snow or ServiceNow environment, or perhaps more akin to the DevOps teams that are here at Atlassian and Jira, right? So you're doing development in a Jira environment. You've got build coordinators that sit all over the country, somebody in Tennessee, somebody in New York, somebody in California, build coordinators that are in Seattle and Texas that are doing this, and you've got developers that are all augmenting and kind of helping deliver this project or this product that you're working on. The way that we work and the way that we operate is we'll integrate with your Jira ticketing process. So let's say developer builds something, they promote it to the environment, and we're connected, right? We see the account that the developer has done the work in, the build that was completed, promoted to a specific environment. We scan that environment in real time, and we push back a bunch of findings. We'll push those findings back to the development team via the integration to Jira, so that the build coordinator can track those bugs, right? They track them as bugs. And as the features are closed and complete, those bugs or those fixes are remediated. And so we don't have to see those again. So we'll conduct a scan and verify that those bugs have been fixed. And now that's all integrated into the way that your build process takes place. So you as the security architect or you as the cloud architect administrator never necessarily even saw that this happened, other than to get a report the next day or later that evening or however you have the reports configured that simply say, hey, this scan was done on this environment. We found all these findings. We submitted it via the build coordination process. The build coordinator did their job. The developer did their job. All this was fixed, and you didn't do anything. You didn't get involved. There was no ticketing that was done via your process or your sort of workflow. And this is happening 24/7, 365, right? So it's not tied to a person. It's tied to your process. And we can integrate this into your pipeline in your environment such that all of this is automated, right? New accounts get created, automatically scanned by us. New instance gets promoted there, automatically scanned by us. Added to the process. Scan from a baseline and compliance standard sort of thing, and able to go through and give you those remediation components of it and findings via whatever process that you kind of have set up within your practice. So I'm going to stop sharing. Hopefully you're able to see that communication settings and component slide. Obviously there's a lot more that we can go on here. But hopefully you were able to see that. Again, I will completely reiterate to you, it's my job to help you understand this. So please reach out to us, and we will gladly show you this one-on-one and actually tie it back to your environment as part of a proof of concept to show you your own data. So kind of wrapping this up and giving you a little bit of summary of how and what the conformity component of Cloud One is and was built, right? 520 checks against the top 60 AWS services, 80-plus checks against the top 10 Azure services. Those numbers are only going up, right? We practice what we preach, and we certainly are agile. We certainly run our tools against our own environment, and we certainly, as new services and new features come out and are demanded from and by our customers, we promote and build those and offer those up to our environments, right? So 600 some odd checks. Remediation guides for each of those checks. Cost to value ratio is very, very high. So when you talk about the investment that you're putting from a monetary standpoint into this, and you compare it to, I've gotten the comment like, oh, I could hire, developers in India to do this. And my feedback is, sure, you could. One, you have no idea how to manage developers in India, but that's fine. That's neither here nor there. Two, the developers in India don't work 24/7, and even if they do have coverage that is 24/7, it's not 365. It's not nearly as automated. It's not built into the process, and you'll have all sorts of communications issues with it. So having that ability to get high value out of something is very much one of the practices or the core competencies of how we built this. Real-time monitoring, right? We're able to go and see things that are happening within your environments within fractions of a second, right? So as soon as it happens, we're able to give you feedback and tell you what happened, how that maps back to what needs to be done and what you need to do that. Total integrations with your existing build processes, complete level of enhancement that's coming to additional integrations that are out there, right? So as our customers get more as we get more customers and as our customers get more advanced and new technologies come out there from, startup in San Francisco to startup in Israel that has this new practice that you're following, we're able to respond and give you, at least a base level of integration, either by a syslog out or just some level of functionality that you're able to see that, right? And so to wrap it all up, right, it's automated. Your ability to go through and see and map back to your architecture. It's able to be part of your existing processes, right? So I'm not coming and just saying, I'm not adding that security tax and adding the security, speed bump or hurdle to the project in the way that you might normally have been considered to be looked at in previous rates, right? I'm just part of your development process. I'm part of your bug, part of your build, part of your feature set. So I'm building that kind of into your culture, not necessarily making this an added tax. And then you're actually able to put in the security practices and checks that are needed to safely and securely kind of promote and build this. So as I said, right, we've got, I've showcased this to you. It's been a limited, tight time window here, but we certainly want you to see this. We certainly want you to experience this. We certainly want you to be part of this and help grow and develop and make this as feature-rich and as functional for you and your peers in this audience as well as in your field. So we do have a free demonstration that's available to you. and or hopefully, I said it 3 times now, but hopefully you've got another tab up, right, that's looking at the knowledge base right now and looking at the rules that we've got in there. Maybe you're sitting there racking your head against the wall about something with guardrail or something with RDS, and we've got the solution literally right there for you to consume and able to be answered for what you've been working on and what you're going through. Obviously, that trial is something that I spoke to, but definitely something that we want to engage with you on. So that's my time. I very much appreciate your time. I want to be very respectful of it. I know we have questions that have been popping up, and I'll pass this over back to Andrew and Jamie. Andrew and Jamie, thank you very much. You've been very, very wonderful, and thank you for setting this up. Thank you as an audience for attending. I'm very humbled, very, very happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks again, Aaron. And yeah, so let's go through some of the questions. We figured we'd do a number of them live. We've been trying to get to them as we go along here as well. But one of the questions that came up is what kind of reporting is available for the conformity piece, the Cloud One conformity?
Sure, good question. So in addition to just having a PDF generated report, that filtered view that I showcased to you can be sent to other administrators within the dashboard. So if you've got other people with whom you'd like to share the data and the findings that you have, you're able to do that within the dashboard. You can set up an email that can actually send the findings or a link to the findings to someone within your organization, or you can do the integration to some of the ticketing and process features. So we've got exportability via PDF, we've got emails, and we've got a kind of a workflow within the tool set in and of itself to share reports and data.
Great. Also, a question whether this can be used on more than AWS. I think you gave a number of AWS examples there. You also talked about Azure a little bit. Just speak to that a little bit more, maybe, Aaron?
Sure, yeah, so multi-cloud, yes. So AWS and Azure is covered right now. We've got GCP on the roadmap, and more than just being on the roadmap, in the process of being developed, which is going to be launched in the second half of this year. So definitely want to cover the major players within the market that I had kind of on that first slide, right, the 3 most major players. So AWS and Azure, yes. GCP on its way. We'll be here, and we're certainly always looking for beta customers to be helping us as part of that. So, if you're a Google person or in a Google environment and you want to help us develop and make this, we'd love to be as responsible as possible to your needs.
Okay. There was a question on, is it on the roadmap for Teams integration in the communication settings?
Very, very astute question. And yes, it absolutely is. Obviously, as we increase the Microsoft or the Azure features and components, in addition to the rules and the scanning that we're doing, we are going to have Teams integration remember, we want to fit into your build process, right? And if you're in an Azure environment, you're in an Office or in a Microsoft environment, we know that you're going to have Teams as part of that. So very much so, yes.
Okay. Another question here. How quick is it to implement the Cloud One conformity and do some testing with it in my environment?
Yep. It's about 45 minutes. We like to say an hour, right? So a majority of that time is tied to the sort of administrative things that you'll have to do to get your accounts in order, to run the template to connect the accounts. Once your account or accounts are connected, the scan runs in 15 minutes, and the reporting features are available in just 3 or 4 minutes after that. So typically it's about an hour.
Okay, great. Actually, I see we've got a couple of questions about Teams, so that's that was a popular one there. Asking about whether this is a SaaS offering. I mean, I think you kind of touched on that. Definitely a SaaS-based service makes it really quick and easy for people to implement with and test with this, right?
Correct, yep.
Yeah. Okay, we're actually kind of wrapping up on our time here. We said we wanted to kind of keep this to 45 minutes as kind of a key time. So if there was any questions that didn't get answered at this point through the Q&A tab, we will make sure to follow up on those. But again, want to thank you very much for attending. Thank you, Aaron, for presenting and educating us on this. You will see in just a second here a browser window that's going to pop up that'll take you to our actual knowledge base, the Cloud One Conformity knowledge base, where all of that information on what our rules look at and the information that's available there. The recording link, so this has been recorded. We will send that out via email to all of the attendees today. And I just would also remind you that this is kind of a series of webinars that we're doing right now. We have another one coming on February 20th where we're going to take a deep dive into kind of cloud-native application security and cloud-native application development, how we provide security and what kinds of things are going on in that industry as well. So if you want a link to that right now, that'll be in the resources widget, or there's information that will come in a follow-up email. So again, thank you very much for your time, and thank you again, Aaron.
Oh, you're welcome. And real quick, just another shout out. Thank you to Amanda. I've forgotten to mention you earlier, but thank you very much for all that you did to set this up. And thank you, everyone else.